If you like katanas, death, and the fact that the grimness of life has sucked all color out of your soul, do I have the game for you. Trek To Yomi. Developed by Flying Wild Hog, which undoubtedly does not ring a bell, at least it didn't for me, and published by Developer Digital, which sort of rings a bell, as they are the developers of Shadow Warrior, in which you are also a samurai. In this game, you are also a samurai, except without the vulgar jokes, demons and guns. That last one was a lie, by the way, you do get a gun, but we'll get to that. Let's start at the beginning. What is the game about?
真の調和を保つ者は幾年もの先を見抜くことができるというが、全ての調和を乱し者は一寸先をも見抜くことができぬ。
Trek To Yomi starts off with you, Hiroki, being taught how to fight by your sensei, Sanjuro. And yes, this is the actual start. No cutscene, no intro. You immediately start off with being taught how to move, attack, defend and parry. The training session gets interrupted, however, after which your sensei runs out of the door, but not before giving you this life lesson.
修行を忘れるでないぞ。己が死に従うのだ。常にな。ヒロキ、無事でおれ。
If you have ever, as in ever, watched any movie about a teacher and his apprentice, or played any video game in which the main character has a role model, you already know that this guy is gonna die. In the next cutscene, done and dusted. If you consider that a spoiler, please know that this happens within the first 15 minutes of the game. You follow him through the village. I can't give you the name of the village as it either has never been mentioned or I just forgot. This may make it seem like I'm disinterested while playing the game, but that's not true. The game talks a lot about our people, even about other people and their villages, but it never mentions what our people are called. This alone is already problematic as is, but it's even worse when you take into consideration that the game will ask you on multiple occasions to make decisions, resulting in either helping yourself or the village. It is very hard to not talk spoilers. It may also be that some of the gameplay you see will be looped, as it's from the first couple of chapters, as it's very hard to not spoil anything if I show later gameplay, but yeah, it's hard to connect, care or bond with a village of our people who are all nameless and whose village doesn't even have a name. I really tried, by the way. Skimmed back through the recordings of the first couple of hours, looked through all the journal notes. I even tried to Google it. These people just don't have a name. I have no idea where we're from, what our village is called. No clue, nothing. You can argue they left it up for our own interpretation, but I think that's too far-fetched. They just didn't bother. Our nameless village gets raided, after which our sensei tries to fend off the attack, fails and dies. He asks you to protect your nameless people and his daughter Aiko. After which the man who killed him escapes and we flash forward, I don't know how many years, as the game doesn't tell, but at least until the point where you're now an adult. Again, this is within the first 15 minutes. I do not care about this man, or his daughter, or even the man I'm playing as. There's not necessarily something wrong with jumping immediately into the action, but you can't expect someone to fully commit to the journey at this point, as we have nothing to attach ourselves to. From here on, I will try to talk as little about the story as possible, so I know I am about to ask for a lot here, but please take my word for it that it unfortunately doesn't get much better from here. Everything you're gonna see in this game, at least story-wise, you will already have seen before. It brings nothing new to the table. That being said, it definitely does not mean that the writing is bad, nor the delivery, by the way. The writing is solid, and even though I don't speak Japanese, every character nails his lines flawlessly.
助けてくれ、頼む。屋根が落ちてきて足を砕かれた。
慈悲も与えぬ非道の輩が今それを請うのか。
面目ねえ。わしはただ言いつけ通りにしただけだ。
では身を切るたびに涙を流しておったのか。
頼む、五章だ。
あっちへ行きな。あんたら鬼は取れるものは全部取っただろう。
おっか、誰だ。
目をつぶってな。
村で切られるのを見た。それでもお主は和平を口にするか。誇りなき化け物め。
I'm not even talking about specific cutscenes at this point. Even wandering through a burned down village will have you instantly noticing the complete misery and despair the inhabitants of that place are experiencing. That being said though, the voice actor for Hiroki was so good that I had to look him up. Do you know that feeling? When an actor looks or sounds so familiar or his performance is so good, you immediately want to see if he's done other work besides this? Well, unfortunately I couldn't find much. Hiroki is voiced by Masayuki Kato. I honestly couldn't find anything else for him besides this. He at least doesn't have a very detailed page, not even a Wikipedia one that I could look up. So yeah, props to him for his performance. I hope he does more in the future. The game presents you with some dialogue options throughout the story that will eventually lead to different endings. I wish I could be less harsh on those, but they have zero depth, twists or meaning to them. They completely change the ending, true, but the choices are so straightforward, you will get what you select and that's that. If you go for the selfish choices, you get a selfish ending. Go for the redeeming choices, you get a redeeming ending. That's it. Let's talk about gameplay. Trek To Yomi is a 2D scroller that, occasionally, switches to an isometric 2D scroller with 3D modeling. This essentially means that you are constantly moving left and right, but sometimes get the option to use the W and S keys to move farther from or closer to the screen. This instantly brings me to two major issues that I experienced when playing the game. The first one is that whenever you're about to fight enemies, they will often appear from behind or in front the 2D path you are currently on. They then have to get on your path, so to speak, before you can engage into combat with them. The problem is that the game does not register this properly from time to time. You cannot attack when you're traversing the world, meaning you automatically enter into a combat stance whenever combat begins. So when you can swing your sword around, it basically means there should be something to hit somewhere in your direct vicinity. However, because your enemies are possibly not close enough to your path yet, you sometimes swing your sword at them, but they will be protected by invisible barriers or just simply not have a hitbox yet. The second issue is that the game loves to transition from this 2D to isometric 3D, and with loves I mean like every 5 to 10 seconds. This means you will be spending a lot of time running to the right, as you do in every other 2D scroller, as that's the direction you're supposed to be going, but then due to a camera switch, you're now walking a completely different direction, as the game now suddenly has to take a 360-degree angle into consideration instead of just going right or left. The second issue is a bit more forgiving, as this is more of an outside of combat problem, so it's not as game-breaking, just a bit annoying. The first one, however, is just bad game design, as now I am wasting stamina hitting nothing or getting hit because I thought my attack was actually going to hit something that couldn't even have been hit in the first place. It's also a very out of place issue, as the hitboxes besides this problem are actually pretty good. Your sword can even get hit without defending or parrying, giving it the actual feeling of an object in your hands instead of something you just swing around without any weight or feeling behind it. Now that we're on the subject of swinging swords, you unlock different combinations for your sword throughout the game. They are obtained by killing enemies or dipping into secret side areas. Still, there are only light and heavy attacks, and the combinations are just a mixture of the two. The only thing that adds flavor besides these combos are ranged attacks and finishers. Remember how I mentioned the gun at the start? Besides this hand cannon, you also get bow shurikens and a bow. The cannon packs a punch, but is insanely slow. The bow shurikens are more of a nuisance than an actual damage dealing weapon, so you're left with essentially just the bow. This one is fast enough to shoot repeatedly but also deals damage. If you want to take anything pragmatic from this review, use the bow. The other two aren't worth it. The finishers look cool and restore some of your health. It's not very clear, however, when you can use them and when not. The game says you can finish stunned enemies, but there's no indication or marker when they're stunned or not. Often you're gonna find yourself spamming the execute button only to realize the enemy isn't stunned but just had a bug in his eye. If you're out of stamina, you start doing your best Ozzy Osbourne impression and you essentially can't do anything anymore. So spam striking every attack and combination probably isn't a good idea. Hitting people feels satisfying, and the slicing of the katana is music to the ears. There are 3 difficulties to choose from. On easy, you can take more damage and the game throws an abundance of ammo your way. On hard, it's the opposite for both. I played on normal and still died quite often. It was a nice challenge, and seeing as the game can have some annoying combat moments, I personally recommend playing on this level if you want to have a fun experience without too much frustration. The real question is it fun enough to keep my attention? And the answer is yes, but a very flimsy one. There are enemy type varieties, but you'll quickly learn you can parry and light attack your way through 90% of the game, with the only exception being people who attack from range and boss battles. The game throws an additional puzzle your way, but these don't add much depth or insight to the overall experience. The game is grey, there is nothing of color, so whenever you see 3 bright glowing markers, it's not hard to figure out what you're supposed to do with them.
動くようだ。何か刻まれておるようじゃ。
Well, maybe we can find the missing pieces. Do you see the missing pieces?
Except for finding new combos and hidden areas, you can also find collectibles. This brings me to the number one thing that I hated about this game, and to me is unforgivable in any video game. Ever, no matter what. You will often reach points where there are 2 ways to go. Hiroki will sometimes even make remarks about these areas. However, normally in the game, when your character mentions something about the path they're on, it means you're going towards the goal that you're supposed to work towards. Whenever they're silent, you're in a side area. This game not only randomly mixes these things up,
もう少し高く登れば。
but what's even worse is that it locks you in the new area whenever you have traveled beyond a certain point. This means I am being punished for exploring, as I now cannot get back to the previous area unless I reload a checkpoint, as there are no other individual saves.
もはやわしらは帰ることはできぬ。
拙者の重みにも耐えられぬなら、そなたの重みにも耐えられまい。他に戻る道はないのか。
道などない。道などない。
It's not like I am missing anything major or important, but whoever thought this was a good idea? Honestly, the last part made me nauseous. Let's talk about the saving grace of this game and wrap the review up. Trek To Yomi is beautiful. Fighting on rooftops while thunder strikes in the background, on village squares that are littered with blood and bodies, or in ancient temples with deadly traps. The game is just very pretty to look at. As I mentioned before, the voice acting is great, so whenever you want to feel what losing all hope and faith in happiness feels like, boot this game up. If the story is lacking and the gameplay not too spectacular, you really have to wonder if the game looks pretty is enough of a saving grace to spend money on it though. A pet peeve I ran into is that you cannot walk, you either run or stand still. This may not seem like much, but in a game where there's so much time spent on the environment and the setting, it feels weird to just run by everything. This may be a thing on console, I can imagine it has to be, but the PC version has no direct controller support, which is really weird to me as the game shipped to console as well. Another weird issue I ran into was that you often get stuck on small rocks or branches. Not the end of the world, just a weird nuisance. I played the game on a 3060 Ti on Quad HD resolution. All settings maxed out, and I have lost count of the amount of frame drops I got. They are numerous. I want to show you a part in which it got really bad, but it may be a bit too spoilery for some people, so sort of spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1... This was one of the more extreme cases, but yeah, expect some more of these during a run. I dumped it down to medium settings, which did make a bit of a difference, but the game does not look that graphically demanding at all, so odds are it just isn't optimized perfectly. Other than that, the only bug I ran into is that sometimes the bodies are spazzing out whenever you kill someone, but that's the only glitch I found. So yeah, at least the game shipped whenever it was 100% ready, and while many a game can't say that nowadays, that's not a valid reason to give credit where it shouldn't be due. So, where does that leave us? Trek To Yomi is a decent side-scrolling adventure. The general setting and visuals look amazing, and the characters put their entire souls into the delivery of their lines. The story is uninteresting, however, and the gameplay is fun enough for a couple of hours, but offers nothing compelling that will make you want to get back to it after you finish it the first time. If you are really into 2D scrollers or samurai games or like Japanese culture in general, I'd recommend buying this one as it's only 18 bucks on Steam. You're probably better off getting it on a Game Pass though, as it's also on there, where you get access to 100 of different games next to this one. If you're not into 2D side scrollers or samurai games, you're not missing out on anything, unfortunately, if you skip this one. The potential was there, and it's a decent game, but all in all, nothing special. Thanks for watching.